For anyone who regularly watches this channel, it's no big secret that Chucky is my all-time favorite horror character. I mentioned in my video covering the first Child's Play movie that I used to pester employees at Toys R Us all the time, asking if they had good guy dolls in stock. It's also no secret that this is my favorite film in the entire franchise. Like many other fans, I always wondered why Catherine Hicks and Chris Sarandon didn't return in the second movie. Well, it's because their planned opening scene was cut due to budget constraints. On top of that, Chris declined to participate once he found out the original director, Tom Holland, wasn't going to be involved. So while their return was initially planned, it just never came to be. Despite not appearing in the film, Hicks was often on set visiting her husband, Kevin Yagher, who once again operated the Chucky animatronics. Within the story, their absence was explained by saying that Mike and his partner Jack refused to back Karen and Andy's story in court. Personally, I think Mike not backing Karen's story was a weak writing choice. I could see his partner Jack wussing out, but Mike was more involved, and I just can't see him refusing to stand up for Karen, even if it meant ending his career as a cop. His conviction in the first movie showed he wouldn't have backed down, at least in my opinion. I can't imagine him letting Andy be taken away after everything that happened. But as always, I'll drop links in the description so you can rent or buy this movie for yourself. As always, I'll recap the story and pause at certain points to share behind-the-scenes tidbits and fun facts. But with all that out of the way, let's talk about 1990's Child's Play 2. Our story begins 2 years after the events of the first film. Executives from Play Pals, the company behind Good Guy Dolls, head to their nearby factory, where technicians work on rebuilding the burned remains of Chucky. They scrape melted and charred plastic from his metal skull. A technician buffs the scorch marks and fits new rubber skin onto the frame, and piece by piece the doll takes shape again, freckles and all. The company thinks they are proving the doll was harmless. In reality, they are unknowingly bringing back pure evil. Mattson arrives, nervously guiding his boss and company CEO, Mr. Sullivan, through the halls of the factory. He proudly explains that the company recovered the doll's remains from the incident with the Barclay family in 1988, and that they rebuilt it to reassure investors and prove the doll was nothing more than a toy. Sullivan, unimpressed, listens with thinning patience as Mattson continues to talk. He notes that Karen Barclay testified in court, standing by her son's claim the doll came alive, and that the court labeled her mentally unstable and unfit, which only made the company's defense stronger. He also revealed that the two cops, Mike and Jack, never corroborated Karen's story. Sullivan's face hardens, and with sarcasm, he asks if Mattson has any more good news. Mattson scrambles, insisting the doll was fine aside from being burned to a crisp. He theorizes that a factory worker must have tampered with the voice box, recorded threatening lines before placing it into a random doll, and the rest was just a 6-year-old's wild imagination. As they enter the lab, 2 men are installing the doll's eyes with a machine. At first it seems routine, but the mechanism jams. Frustrated, the tech smacks the machine until it resumes, forcing the eyes in with a metallic clunk. He smirks and pats it, but the moment his hand touches the machine, sparks fly. Electricity arcs and the tech is blasted through a window. His body lands with a frozen look of terror. Sullivan is horrified, more for the company's reputation than the man's death. Furious, he blames Mattson for this disaster, pointing out that their image was already shaky, and now an employee has been killed. Sullivan storms out, ordering the mess cleaned up. When Mattson asks what to do with the doll, Sullivan sneers and tells him to stick it up his ass. The camera lingers on the doll, an ominous omen of things to come. We cut to 8-year-old Andy Barclay sitting in a foster care office. He looks like any boy his age, but there's a haunted look in his eyes, quietly hinting at the horrors he's endured. The counselor questions him gently, attempting to assess his state of mind. Andy responds softly, his voice hushed. From behind a two-way mirror, Phil and Joanne Simpson observe, contemplating fostering Andy. Phil is wary, unsure if they can handle him and concerned he might have deeper issues. Joanne, however, is more empathetic. She perceives a lonely child who needs stability and believes they can help him. After some discussion, they opt to take him in. At their suburban home, Joanne shows Andy around, pointing out his room upstairs. Exploring the house, Andy opens a door and discovers a blonde teenage girl smoking. Joanne enters and scolds her, reminding her that Phil won't approve. This is Kyle, the Simpsons' other foster child. Kyle remarks she'll be on her own soon since she's almost 18. Joanne confiscates her cigarettes and leaves with Andy. As soon as they're gone, Kyle pulls out another pack and lights up, defiantly disregarding her foster parents' rules. Andy begins to settle in, his room filled with toys and games. While unpacking his clothes, Joanne mentions that even more toys are in the closet. Andy checks and a hidden good guy doll drops from the shelf, horrifying him. He runs but bumps into Phil, who scolds him for running in the house. Joanne quickly apologizes, explaining that she had forgotten the doll was there. Joanne takes the doll and leaves the room with Phil. Andy presses against the closed door, relieved it's gone. Meanwhile, Mattson leaves the Playpals factory in a rainstorm, Chucky under his arm. He tries stuffing the doll in his trunk, but it's too full of toys. Annoyed, he tosses Chucky into the back seat, thinking nothing of it. On the road, Mattson calls his wife to say he'll be late, then calls his girlfriend promising he'll be right over. At a liquor store stop, Chucky takes the chance to use the car phone. He calls the foster center, cheerfully asking for Andy while pretending to be his Uncle Charles. The legendary Brad Dourif not only returned to voice Chucky, but he also recorded all of his dialogue in advance, allowing for better synchronization of Chucky's mouth movements. A recording was used to keep everyone involved in the scene consistent and on the same timing. Child's Play 2 clocks in at about 84 minutes, making it one of the shortest movies in the franchise. However, it was a big jump in dialogue. Brad really defines Chucky's voice in this movie. In fact, Child's Play 2 is the first movie where Chucky's wisecracking, talkative personality fully blossoms. Brad has said that Part 2 is where he really nailed the voice and personality he always wanted for the murderous good guy doll. Though he has said Child's Play 2 was a blast to be a part of, he has repeatedly shared that 1998's Bride of Chucky was actually his favorite film in the entire franchise, and praised its balance of humor and horror, even saying he had trouble saying some of the lines without laughing. When Mattson returns, he drives off, only to be ambushed by Chucky from the back seat. Chucky threatens him with what looks like a gun. Panicked, Mattson assumes it's a mugger and does as told. Soon he's tied to his seat while Chucky interrogates him. After getting what he wants, Chucky sprays him with a squirt gun, water splashing his cheek. Mattson laughs, realizing it was just water. But his relief is short-lived. Chucky suddenly throws a plastic bag over his head, suffocating him. Mattson struggles, but Chucky only tightens the grip, giggling as he pulls the bag tighter, slowly ending Mattson's life. That night, Andy is shaken and seeking comfort. He asks Joanne to sing to him. She softly hums as the camera pans down the hallway, revealing that Chucky not only found Andy, but made it inside the home. Chucky hears Andy isn't alone. Chucky notices the good guy doll named Tommy. Enraged, he smashes a family heirloom over its head, caving in his face. He then buries the doll in the yard under the tree swing, laughing as he covers it with dirt, using a toy shovel.
Eat dirt, Tommy!
Chucky then takes Tommy's place. The Tommy Good Guy doll's name is a cheeky nod to Tom Holland, director of the original Child's Play. Some fans think the scene where Chucky destroys and buries Tommy is a subtle insult to Holland, following reported behind-the-scenes tensions with the series creator. Eden Gross again plays the voice of the non-possessed good guy dolls. He was a child actor and voice actor in the late 80s and early 90s. Besides Chucky, he voiced characters in shows like The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh and Pound Puppies. Speaking of Tommy, it's rumored that they created a more rigid plastic face and broke it by purposefully dropping a bowling ball on it, putting in the eyes afterward in an attempt at some disturbing humor, saying they wanted it to resemble a dazed cartoon character. The next morning, Phil scolds Andy and Kyle over the broken heirloom. Both deny it, but since neither confesses, they're both punished. Kyle says it's unfair since she had plans that night. Phil doesn't budge. Later, she and Andy do laundry in the basement. Kyle sneaks a smoke and casually asks Andy if he broke the statue. Andy denies it. Kyle don't believe him, but still offers him advice, one foster kid to another. She asks Andy to hold her smoke while folding laundry. Andy sneaks a drag, and Kyle scolds him, asking why he did that. Andy says he just wanted to taste it. The comical situation breaks the tension, and the two share an endearing sibling moment. Andy listens to her advice about the Simpsons rules, how other foster families can be worse, and that these are actually really good people. Taking the advice to heart, he goes upstairs and overhears Phil and Joanne talking about him. Phil is hesitant, saying Andy may need more care than they can provide. Joanne insists he's been through a lot and will settle in with time. Taking Kyle's advice, using caution, Andy confronts his fear and picks up the good guy doll, cautiously trying to reconcile with his past. He's young but smart and careful. Andy first asks the doll its name. Chucky nearly gives up the ghost by nearly forgetting the name Tommy. Andy, following his mother's example, checks the doll's back to make sure it has batteries. Unfortunately, the factory techs installed them during the rebuild. Still, it reassures him enough to pick the doll up. He walks past Phil and Joanne and returns to the basement. Phil and Joanne exchange a look, shocked, but are hopeful that Andy is trying. Later outside, Andy swings while Kyle tends the garden. They share a heart-to-heart conversation. Kyle then playfully kicks Andy off the swing to take a turn herself, and they playfully fight. Andy pushing her on the swing as Kyle kicks up dirt. Chucky watches, hoping they don't uncover Tommy and spoil his plan. Joanne calls them in for dinner. Kyle reminds Andy not to forget the doll. Hesitant, Andy picks it up before going inside. That night, as Andy sleeps, Chucky strikes. He binds Andy's arms and legs and gags him with a sock ball. Andy wakes in terror, muffled cries escaping as Chucky begins a voodoo ritual to transfer his soul into Andy's body. Before the ritual finishes, Kyle sneaks in after a night out. Chucky whispers a threat that Kyle doesn't hear.
Next time you're alone, you're mine.
She sees Andy tied up. She's caught off guard. She questions how he did this to himself as she rapidly unties him. Andy's first act is to sock Chucky in the face, knocking him off the bed. The commotion alerts Phil and Joanne, who see Kyle untying Andy. Phil is furious, thinking Kyle tied him up to cover her own sneaking out. Kyle laughs, clarifying, but her rebellious reputation doesn't help her case. Andy shouts that Chucky did it. Phil, frustrated, picks up Chucky and leaves the room. Andy chases after Phil, warning that Chucky needs to be killed. Joanne glares at Kyle, frustrated at the setback. Phil, trying to remain calm with Andy, promises to handle it. He opens the basement door and tosses Chucky down the stairs, declaring he's gone and won't be bothering him anymore. But as the door slams shut, Chucky sits up in the dark, wiping blood from his nose. He's frustrated to find out he's already becoming human again.
No! I'm turning human again?
Come on, dude, I literally just said that. The next day, Andy walks to the bus with Kyle. She asks how he tied himself up. Andy says he already told her. Chucky did it. Kyle laughs, but Andy, frustrated, points out she's like everyone else. She won't believe him either, until it's too late. As the bus drives away, Chucky's little legs kick, as he stows away on the bus to follow Andy. During recess, Chucky sabotages Andy's paperwork, setting him up for after-school detention. In class, Andy tries to focus but is harassed by a boy behind him, drawing Miss Kettlewell's attention. Later, Andy is cleaning up after class as she grades papers. We see Chucky scribbled an insult on Andy's homework. Opening a cubby, Andy finds Chucky hiding inside, startling him. Andy backs away in fear but is confronted and accused by his teacher. The teacher, frustrated, locks Chucky in the classroom closet, scolding Andy and locking him in the classroom as she goes to the office to call Joanne. While the teacher is gone, Chucky bangs on the door, urging Andy to let him out. First feigning being nice, trying to coax Andy into opening the door.
Let me out of here, Andy. It's dark in here.
Then demanding it, like a dickhead.
Let me out, you little dick!
Fear mounting, Andy makes a desperate escape through a window to run from the school. The teacher returns and hears rattling at the closet, assuming it's Andy. She opens it and flips on the light, searching. She's startled by a falling dodgeball. As she goes to place the ball back on the shelf, Chucky leaps out, stabbing her in the boobies with a ball pump. Miss Kettlewell's stunt double takes an overly dramatic toss and tumble over some desks. This is likely the first time old Kettlewell's been bent over a desk since the Reagan administration. I'm probably gonna get demonetized for that one. Chucky exits the closet, wielding a yardstick like a weapon, declaring she's been very naughty.
You've been very naughty, Miss Kettlewell.
And delivers a gruesome end, repeatedly striking the teacher with the impromptu weapon. Back at the Simpson home, tensions rise. Phil grows impatient, convinced Andy is unstable. Joanne tries to stay calm, but it's hard. She tells Phil that Andy's teacher called, saying that he wrote an obscenity on his paper, and that she would be keeping him after school. Andy tries to tell the truth, stating that Chucky did it. Fed up, Phil takes Andy to the basement and orders him to open the door. Andy refuses. Phil raises his voice, but Andy stands firm. Phil opens the basement door, pointing down the steps. He bluntly asks Andy what he sees. Andy says it's Chucky, but Phil cuts him off, saying his name isn't Chucky, it's Tommy. Later, Phil and Joanne argue loudly. Phil says Andy is more than they can handle. Joanne insists they can't give up on family. Phil yells that Andy isn't their child, before slamming the door. Meanwhile, Kyle finds Andy in his room. They overheard the argument. Andy is scared and withdrawn, upset about Chucky's return and the possibility of being sent back to the orphanage. Kyle tries to comfort him, but Andy says that no matter where he goes, Chucky will find him. That night, determined, Andy sneaks downstairs with an electric carving knife, heading to the laundry room where Chucky lurks. Before he can act, Chucky attacks from above, biting Andy. They fall to the floor struggling. Andy reaches for the carving knife. Phil, hearing the commotion, rushes downstairs, finding Andy standing in the dark with the knife. Believing Andy is having a psychotic break, Phil tries to reason with him while descending the steps. Chucky uses an iron hook to trip Phil, sending him crashing through the wooden staircase and hanging upside down, face to face with Chucky. Phil finally realizes the truth. Andy wasn't lying.
How's it hanging, Phil?
Just then, Chucky releases the hook. Phil falls to the concrete floor, breaking his neck. Joanne and Kyle hear the crash and rush downstairs. Kyle calls 911 while Joanne sees Andy slowly approaching. She yells at him to get away from her. Police arrive along with Grace, the head of the foster home. She's there to take Andy back into foster care. Kyle says goodbye to Andy. He reminds her that Chucky's still in the basement and tells her not to let him get her too. Kyle goes to the basement and talks to the police. She sees the good guy doll tucked under the stairs. She tosses Chucky in the trash like a stained pair of undies after one too many Taco Bell Tuesdays. She then begins smoking and swinging, mulling over the night's events, noting that something doesn't feel right. As she drags her feet through the dirt, she notices a shoe. She pulls at it and unearths the original Tommy. She rushes back to the trash cans only to find Chucky gone. Scared that Andy was right, she hurries back inside, ready to warn Joanne. But it's too late. Chucky has already struck. Joanne's fate is sealed. When Kyle stumbles back and sits on the bed in shock, Chucky pops up from the sheets and attacks. The two tussle, and Kyle drops the knife. She uses a lamp to crack Chucky in the face, but when she goes to grab the knife from the floor, Chucky's faster. Kyle slowly walks around the bed, ready to play whack-a-mole with the possessed good guy doll. She tries to back out of the room, but Chucky trips her and holds her at knife point. He then gives Kyle his best Jesse Pinkman impression.
Bitch, you hurt me.
Christine Elise, who portrayed Kyle, mentioned that working with Chucky was difficult due to the complexity of the puppetry. She often had to act while looking at colored pieces of tape where Chucky was going to be. After his motion scenes were filmed and edited in post-production, in the scenes where actors did interact with the puppet, their movements needed to be minimal because the puppets were prone to breaking or malfunctioning. The prop weapons were another challenge. Puppeteers had to be extra careful in scenes where the Chucky puppet was waving plastic weapons inches from actors' faces. As I mentioned in the opening, Kevin Yagher, and yeah, I still get crap for saying his name wrong in a previous video, returned as the on-site puppet master. And though Catherine Hicks didn't return for the role of Karen, she still haunted the set nearly every day to visit her husband for lunch. During these visits, she spent time with Alex Vincent, who plays her son Andy. Vincent has mentioned that Hicks was very supportive and kind, often offering encouragement. Their relationship was described as warm and familial, with Hicks taking on a nurturing role toward Vincent during the filming. Their time together on the first movie contributed to the authentic mother-son dynamic, even though Hicks's character wasn't in the sequel. Later, we see Chucky and Kyle driving to catch up to Andy. A cop pulls them over. Chucky says to floor it, but Kyle replies there's no way to outrun the cops in a station wagon. Chucky gives up and tells her to pull over. The cop questions Kyle and notices the good guy doll, mentioning that his kid sister has one. The cop jokingly asks the doll's name. Chucky turns his head and in his normal voice just says one word.
Chucky.
The cop laughs, amused, then notices a streak of blood running from Chucky's nose. Weirded out, the cop lingers, but Kyle saves the situation by saying some dolls pee, this one bleeds. The cop smirks and leaves, and the two continue driving. Chucky, growing impatient, tells Kyle to step on it. She puts on her seatbelt and says they'll likely get pulled over again. Chucky gets frustrated and Kyle uses the opportunity to slam on the brakes, sending Chucky flying through the windshield.
Shut up and drive before I kick your fucking teeth in!
He latches onto the hood of the car, but Kyle slams him into a fence. She backs up, ready to double tap him with the front bumper. She thinks she smashed into him again, and in a classic horror movie mistake, she steps out of the car to confirm her kill, and again, Chucky gets the jump on her. We cut to the orphanage in the middle of the night. Andy is lying in his room when the fire alarm rings. The kids, one by one, run from the building, but Andy spots Kyle holding Chucky in the stairwell. We see that Chucky has a knife to Kyle's back, forcing her compliance. Grace rounds the corner to see Andy. She looks down and sees Kyle holding the doll and the pulled fire alarm next to her. She asks if Kyle pulled it, and Kyle simply says, "Chucky did it." Grace, assuming this is some sick joke, pulls them both into her office to lecture them. She grabs Chucky from Kyle's arms, and Chucky brutally kills her in front of them.
Amazing, isn't it?
Kyle tries to escape with Andy, but is blocked by Chucky slamming the door.
Snap out of it! You act like you've never seen a dead body before!
With the distraction of the fire and rescue teams running in and out of the building, Chucky and Andy escape and climb into the back of a newspaper truck. The whole time Chucky rides on Andy's back like Yoda in Star Wars, or like my wife every time she nags me to take out the trash. Kyle sees them in the back of the truck as it drives away and rushes to follow. She tails the truck, beeping her horn and flashing her lights to keep Chucky from harming Andy. Chucky flips her the middle finger for her troubles. Knowing she can't stop him directly, she speeds ahead and cuts off the driver, forcing him to pull over. As they both skid to a stop, Kyle exits and runs to the back of the truck, only to see it's empty. The driver tries to confront her, but she spots Andy and Chucky running away and pushes him off her, rolling under the shutter just before it closes. They just so happen to end up at the Play Pals factory. The Play Pal factory, where all the good guy dolls are stacked up, was actually an abandoned warehouse in Valencia, California. This setting provided the eerie and industrial backdrop for the iconic closing scenes of the movie. The production team took their time to dress up the warehouse to look like an active toy factory. A notable detail is that some of the boxes featured in the factory scene were leftover props from the first Child's Play movie. The number of boxes is ultimately unknown, but based on the scene, they were a mix of original detailed boxes and simple yellow cardboard boxes with vinyl stickers attached. To save time and budget, some boxes only had details on one or two sides, depending on which side was facing the camera. The moment where Andy and Kyle are trying to find their way out of the good guy box maze is a direct nod to Stanley Kubrick's 1980 horror classic, The Shining. Andy and Chucky make their way through the maze of boxes and pallets. When they round a corner, Chucky knocks Andy out and begins the spell to switch bodies. The sky darkens, lightning strikes, and thunder crashes. The sound is deafening. Kyle, searching, is unable to hear where they are. Chucky finishes the spell and the storm quickly recedes. All is quiet. Andy's eyes open. Slowly drops of blood fall onto Andy's cheek, dripping from Chucky's nose. He's too late. His soul is now fully bound to the doll, meaning the spell had no effect. In anger, he goes after Andy, intending to kill him. Just then, Kyle pushes a pallet of good guy boxes onto Chucky, causing a distraction, and she screams at Andy to run. Kyle finds Andy, and the two try to make their way through the factory as Chucky gives chase. They seem to lose him, but they also get lost in the maze of bright yellow boxes. Their only hope of getting out is to get higher and see if they can spot an exit. Kyle goes first and quickly makes it to the top. Andy, tired from running and nearly dying multiple times, is slower. He nearly makes it to the top and goes to grab Kyle's hand, but loses his footing and slides back down the rack. Chucky pops up and nearly gets him, but Andy is able to stop himself just in time. He climbs back up, fueled by adrenaline. Chucky stabs at his heels as he chases. Andy just reaches Kyle in time as she pulls him to safety. She pulls the pin on the safety gate, causing it to slam down on Chucky's hand, pinning him in place and giving them time to escape. Chucky, in rage, pulls and severs his own hand, freeing himself from the heavy gate. Andy and Kyle, panicked, try to find a way out. But the layout of the factory is a colorful, confusing maze of nonsensical lines on the ground, whorls of machinery and conveyors. They find an exit door, but need to climb through an eye-pressing machine to reach it. Kyle gets through with ease, but Andy hesitates, afraid. She pulls Andy through, only to find the doors locked. Meanwhile, Chucky brutally upgrades himself by jabbing the tang of his knife into the stub of his missing hand, using box tape to tighten it in place. I'm pretty damn sure it would hurt really, really bad anytime he uses it to slash or stab anything. I bet it feels like shoving your dick in a pencil sharpener. A tech notices that there's a backup on the conveyor to the eye press. He goes to fix it and becomes Chucky's test victim for his new weaponized replacement limb. The tech falls backward onto the conveyor of the eye press, losing his glasses. But it's no problem because he's about to get a whole new set of eyes.
Creepers, creepers, where'd you get those creepers?
As Andy and Kyle try to find a way out, Andy bumps into a button panel and causes a proto-good guy doll to go back into the limb attachment machine. Kyle presses the button, and the doll comes back out looking like it spent its summer vacation at Camp Chernobyl. The distraction allows Chucky to sneak up on them, but Kyle's quick thinking not only saves Andy, it gives her enough time to crack Chucky in the face with a steel drawer, causing an auto hair stapling machine to pin him in place. Andy presses the button to send Chucky back up the conveyor for an all-expenses-paid vacation to Camp Chernobyl. The doors close, and though it's unseen, the machines brutally attach extra limbs to Chucky. This is the perfect example of how sometimes not showing it and allowing your imagination to wander really makes a scene grotesque. Personally, I would have loved to see their plan backfire, with them causing a multi-limbed abomination version of Chucky, able to climb and crawl faster with all those extra appendages. But the cost to pull it off, and this being the early 90s, it likely wouldn't have been as cool in real life as what I have imagined in my mind. Once the screaming stops, Andy presses the button, revealing the results of Chucky's impromptu European vacation. When the conveyor switches forward again, a melted, smoking pile of plastic limbs and a puddle of gunk are all that seem to be left. Andy and Kyle begin to leave, walking hand in hand, thinking the nightmare is over. Suddenly, the body of the technician swings in and hits Kyle, knocking her out and onto the conveyor, slowly moving her up to the automated mutilation machine. Andy dodges the swinging body. Chucky appears, legless and scooting on a cart. He swipes his knife hand at Andy, threatening to cut off his legs. He lunges and tries to stab Andy's legs, but misses, stabbing into a vent instead and getting stuck. As he struggles to free himself, a droplet of hot plastic falls, sizzling on the vent, causing Chucky to look up. Andy coldly reaches up and pulls the lever, covering Chucky in searing, melted plastic, giving Andy enough time to reach Kyle before she is beheaded by the mechanical doors. They look at the melted remains of Chucky again. Just then, Chucky springs up and attacks Kyle. Thinking fast, Kyle sees a long air hose and stuffs it into Chucky's mouth. The melted plastic forms a tight seal. His face and body inflate grotesquely, cheeks ballooning and eyes bulging. Then, with a sickening pop, he explodes like a watermelon at the Yagher family reunion.
We're gonna start with the watermelon!
Chunks of Chucky rain down on Andy and Kyle. Now, with the threat finally neutralized, the two leave the factory. Outside, dawn is broken. The factory shutters open. Kyle and Andy step into the morning light, both covered in blood and melted plastic. Andy turns to Kyle and asks where they're going. Kyle says they're going home. Andy hesitates and asks, "Where's home?" Kyle smirks and says she has no idea. The two walk off as the screen fades to black.
And this normally would be where the movie ends, but there is an extended ending. When I first saw the alternate ending, I was sick with 103-degree fever. I was half asleep on NyQuil, and let me tell you, 90s NyQuil hit different. The sound of Chucky exploding woke me up. I watched as the movie continued on well past the point of where it normally ends. It showed a piece of Chucky's face melting into the vat of plastic, moving through the pipes, and being pressed into a new good guy face. It smiles before the credits began to roll. I tried to tell my brothers about this ending, but being a feverish 8-year-old, they thought I had a fever dream. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I remembered and looked into the alternate ending. I wanted to see if it was real. I found out that the alternate ending I had seen so many years ago was a TNT network exclusive.
I have many different versions of the movie, and none feature the extended ending. It's because of fans recording it and uploading it that I am even able to show it. I've seen the movie on TNT in recent years with the alternate ending completely removed. So we have horror fans and the internet to thank for preserving it. Otherwise, it could very well have ended up being lost media. I want to thank the channel members and all of you who take the time to watch my videos and talk with me in the comments. Without viewers like you, there would be no reason to keep doing these videos. Don't forget to click the button, ring the bell, and blah blah blah. Oh, before I forget, starting in October, I'll be doing this full time, so there'll be no more mad dashes to finish content in 2 days. I'm planning on uploading 3 videos a week, and that'll likely be starting the second week of October. And just a heads up, way in advance, the weekend of September 26th is the weekend before my birthday, so I won't be spending it locked away editing. I'm thinking maybe I'll do a laid-back gaming video, or maybe even a live event or something. I'm a bit hesitant about going live though, just because I don't want to risk somebody trying to swat my house and put my wife and kid in danger. I know that's kind of an irrational fear, but there's a lot of goofy people on the internet. If there's some way to make it work, I'm willing to give it a try. My nephew streams, so maybe he can help me set it all up. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Take care. See you next time.